What does it mean to be a Soul Reaper? According to the opening monastish in the anime comic for Memories of Nobody, they protect the current state of the world, and they do this by regulating the balance and flow of the souls across it. So what happens when one goes beyond this threshold? I think this video will make you think of true Shikai Ichigo entirely different than before or what you've mainly seen in discussions surrounding it, so let's get into it. For starters, this is primarily animate scaling, and I can't stress this enough. Continuity isn't really understood well across Bleach fans in the West, and for almost 20 years, Kubo and the staff at Parrot have said numerous times that the anime and manga are different continuities of Bleach. And at this point, the anime continuity is at the very least an equal interpretation of the manga, if not an outright superior interpretation of the story, due to Kubo supervising and being a part of every step of the animation process of all of these new exclusive scenes and plot points in the Thousand Year Blood War anime, which is a sequel to the original anime and picks up right where it left off. A true Shikai at its core, while still the initial release of a Zanpakuto, is the manifestation of a soul's complete acceptance and harmony in a truer nature, hence the name, reflecting the wielder's fully realized identity and essence. This idea just doesn't apply to Ichigo, but applies universally for everyone across the series. Thematically, it's sort of like a Zen-like Buddhist approach on spiritual power and pressure use that Soul Reapers utilize, and coincides with Oetsu's philosophy that the blade must truly represent a true connection to its wielder, leading to new heights in not just spiritual power and pressure, but greater mastery with the self. Squad Zero members are often heavily underestimated in what they can do due to the manga continuity, but the anime has changed that for the most part. And while Uetsu isn't the scientist that Senjumaru, Mayuri, and Uraharu are reputed to be, he is an unparalleled blacksmith and is one of the most knowledgeable characters in the entire Bleach franchise, forging Asuchis for Soul Reapers to imprint their essence on since the dawn of Soul Society and understanding the nuances that comes with them. This would even include the Asuchi Ichibei imprinted on to create Ichimonji. This Zen-like Buddhist principle was necessary for Ichigo facing down against Yhwach in the climax of the Thousand Year Blood War, at least in the manga, with him gaining the window to blur the boundaries between races and the Horn of Salvation due to this, which I assume the anime will stay true towards. And obviously a true Bankai, which is a truer culmination of a Soul Reaper. The anime continuity, however, has added a bit more to this idea, with Ichibei suggesting that this truer form Ichigo was something he was supposed to have from the beginning, and honing his skills was just a stepping stone, and not this endgame base form for how it was in the manga, and that he must transcend Soul Reapers to defeat Yhwach. The introduction of the Arazuzando and Ichigo's training in it was actually an anime-only idea created by the director, and Kubo just happened to like it and collaborate with the stuff to make it work, while the Sternritter battles with the captains were going on in Core 2. But the training itself is a spiritual crossroads for Ichigo. The basis behind it is to prove that this soul is considered a worthy vessel, capable of stabilizing reality under the weight of the world's current shape. This weight is metaphorical and allegorical. It isn't a test of literal lifting strength, which is what down players try to equate this to. Even though we don't see Ichigo lift anything, this is more so a test of Ichigo's spiritual capacity, mainly due to the qualities and nature of his soul being, made up of every race in the world of Bleach. So what does this actually mean? It means that while Ichigo can't really warp reality or has any warping abilities himself like Aizen or borderline every Sternritter, the potency of his soul proved worthy of being Soul King level, post-Razadando training. Ichibei even goes on to confirm this in Camp for Your Own World, saying Ichigo actually possessed the qualities to replace the Soul King if all else failed. So it's really up to the imagination how much of an increase or enchantment the Razadando training actually gave to Ichigo, whether it's stat-wise or qualitatively speaking. This increase is best shown between the fight Ichigo had with Yhwach in the first invasion of the Soul Society and the fight Ichigo had with Yhwach at the Soul King Palace. During the first encounter, it was a completely unraged full-bring Bankai Ichigo against base Yhwach. They sort of clashed swords for a brief time until Yhwach just starts outperforming him and dominates him. This is because Ichigo, even at his strongest at that point, lacked the spiritual depth and integration needed to contend with someone like Yhwach, the ancestor of Quincy's. It's like throwing this version of Yhwach up against Ichibei, Jugrim, or Hashwolf. Even destroying his Bankai shows that fusion between his Fullbring and Shinigami powers had limitations and was an incomplete evolution of his abilities. The fusion of his Fullbring and Soul Reaper powers was essentially an increase that brought his Shikai and Bankai to levels beyond their previous limits in Fate Katakura Town. As we know, Fullbring really emphasized physical increases like durability and strength, so fusing this allowed Ichigo sharper control over his physical capabilities, being solely rooted in getting more power. The fact that Yhwach felt Ichigo's connection to the everlasting memories of the Arazazando, which revealed images of the actual creation of the three realms after getting wrecked in their most recent fight, reflects Ichigo's connection to the Bleach cosmos. He isn't just stronger, the quality of his abilities and capabilities are truer and resonate with the world. His ability to even piece around a base Yhwach post Arazazando is the result of his transcendence. Yhwach has to use the Almighty to turn the tides of the battle, and the anime makes this interesting because the staff at Parrot and Kubo himself are treating it like it's not just foresight and power nullification, but also a stat amp as well. There really was no implication of this in the manga whatsoever, but in the anime, he just sort of pops out the Almighty after getting outperformed with just basic sword strikes from Ichigo, then starts to straight up body him. I also feel like the community also probably gives Uryu way too much benefit of the doubt in his recent fight against Ichigo as well. And this isn't to say Uryu's scaling hasn't changed and whatnot, since before he fought Ichigo, he beat a fully powered Squad Zero member with an incomplete Volstandic, and in their actual fight, we see Ichigo be on the defensive at times, just straight up layering on Blute when Uryu's arrows are concentrated enough. But more so to reiterate what the story page for the episode, they brought in saying Ichigo was mainly questioning his intent throughout the fight and refusing to reciprocate the lethal intent Uryu gave off. This will hold even more true that the anime actually stays true to Ichigo being able to fight off Soul King Yhwach's stark spiritual pressure, but in the anime, of course, it'll be true Shikai Ichigo post Arazazando training doing this feat, and not just true Shikai as it was in the manga. So while the idea of true Shikai is rooted in the Zen Buddhist-like principles, they can be used to explain qualitative amps in power and the Arazazando being rooted in more so mystical ascension, which is what I really believe Parrot and Kubo were going for. I believe the narrative itself serves this form and transcendence for Ichigo even more justice. Bleach is a series that presents a soul pantheism. Pantheism is a philosophical and religious view that equates God with the universe and all that exists in a pantheistic worldview. Divinity is present in all things, and there really is no separation between the divine and material world. For Bleach, this is why souls or spiritual essence exist in all things from liquids, asphalt, chairs, glass, plants, etc. We know the focal point or linchpin of this soul pantheism that connects everything is the Soul King, due to separating life and death from the primordial sea and Ichibei sealing him in a crystal. He is in many ways and quite literally the universe itself, which is why everything starts collapsing or starts to destabilize if he's not the anchor sustaining everything. We also have a consistent metric that characters in this tier of power can do more than just stabilize or sustain things, but can actually reshape or even outright destroy the world as they see fit. But in general, determining the feat of one's spiritual capacity to stabilize the world or Lichpin is replacing the Soul King or just being in that tier of power depends on your interpretation of the cosmology of Bleach. The anime continuity for Bleach is a lot more direct with its cosmology, starting off with the basics, the three worlds, which are actually the three realms of existence in the original Japanese, are stated to have their own heavens and earth, and that the world of the living and Soul Society can be likened to planets. To make sense of this, it's directly shown on screen that the world of the living cosmos is within a space-time container, and the Soul Society is stated on numerous occasions to be parallel to this. We see that these spherical dimensional containers are actually identical in size in Memories of Nobody multiple times, which is canon to both manga and anime, and recently acknowledged to be the case for the anime finally, meaning whatever volume is in the World of Living is identical to the volume in the Soul Society. I see people say that the World of the Living and Soul Society share a temporal dimension, and this is just false. During the Soul Society arc, Yoroichi, an ex-captain of the Gotei 13 and ex-clan leader of the Shihohin family, drew two separate timelines to show events and the passage of time unfolding in parallel and in synchronization. If it was just one temporal dimension for both realms, two separate timelines being drawn out with events on them over the course of time wouldn't be necessary. To further cement this, the Ragai arc, which is canon to the anime due to Ichigo losing his powers differently than how it happened in the manga, explores the distortions happening in the Dangai that just throw the temporal dimensions of the living world
in Soul Society out of sync. Plus, in Unmasked, it's stated that the world of the living and Soul Society are different dimensions or other dimensional worlds, depending on the translation you get. There's literally nothing to suggest these realms share a temporal dimension at all. Hueco Mundo, as established, is considered its own self-contained realm of existence with its own heaven and earth, or cosmos. It is the dimension between the world of the living and Soul Society, but adjacent to the Dongai and distinct from the Kyogoku dimensions. The Dongai is outright stated to be a hyperspace dimension, and the narrator in Can't Fear Your Own World explicitly uses a void of space when likening the Garganta to outer space, so it's referring to spatial dimensions here, meaning it's a fourth dimensional space since it holds fourth dimensional objects like spherical space-time containers, similar to how outer space, which is a 3D void, holds three-dimensional objects like galaxies, solar systems, and planets. So, low multiversal is safe. It's stated that there's infinite futures twice in the novels, and if you think the Soul King stabilizes all of time as well, that would be infinite fourth dimensional or multiversal plus scaling. It's also mentioned that the Garganta as a structure itself has its own temporal dimension and spirits are forever with you, meaning that the Garganta would be fifth dimensional in its totality, composed of four spatial dimensions and one temporal. You can argue infinitely fifth dimensional due to the void of the Garganta itself being stated to be an infinite endless expanse in the official translation. But this is heavily debated on, and many different translations ensue over this. We know from Can't Fear Your Own World that the narrator thinks the Soul King flat out transcends everything, not just races, but even the world it occupies. Ichibe also tells us that the Soul King was sort of conjured up from the primordial sea itself as a response to primordial hollows consuming souls. During this time, and the effects were cosmic in nature, as it was stated that it stagnated all of creation. In this part of the novel, the narrator and Ichibe's rendition of the creation story in Bleach is sort of debated on by the community since the anime tells us something different from what Ichibe describes, but the transcending everything shouldn't really be debated on due to the nature of his existence. I'm personally not really a fan of these types of statements and used for cosmology scaling, and they sort of ignore context to a degree, but I have seen the argument float around for some time now, so if you use this, this can be a highball at 6D. Anything above this, in my opinion, is just outright wank or just taking stuff out of context, or at the worst, using mistranslations from certain movies to wank. Hope you guys enjoyed. I try to cover every little detail about the additional and exclusive nuances true Shikai Ichigo has in the anime to break down the form as best as possible. I genuinely feel like this will be a good video for any Bleach fan out there, and remember, this is anime Ichigo we're talking about with Rosando training on top of that. But otherwise, I hope you all enjoy the new core of Bleach, and bye.